Joining me is Virginia Republican Congressman Tom Garrett. Congressman, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate your time, sir.
Katie, thanks for the opportunity.
What's going on with the president? Is he leading on this? Has he been involved in the negotiations to reopen the government?
Oh, I think so. I mean, you know, there's an argument that he's just surrendered to the flow, but I don't think that's happened at all. Now, at some point, you have to understand that we got to get out of this maze that was created by the Senate itself and by Senator Schumer's sort of histrionic fit that demanded a shutdown. So if there's a silver lining here, it's that the United States public got a civics lesson on what a filibuster is and how a minority can sort of stop everything if they want to.
But can you make the argument that the president was just, I don't know, taking care of his own shoes and not taking care of the shoes of the Republican Party when he disappeared over the weekend and didn't offer any leadership? It didn't say what he wanted out of this immigration debate, didn't say what his demands were for the CR, didn't even make a single call to a Democrat.
Well, you could say it'd become an island in the hazy world around us, but having said that, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes as it relates to contact with leadership in the Senate. I think, again, I mean, look, this is not, you can say it's a Schumer shutdown or a Trump shutdown. I think when you announce that the shutdown is going to end before the vote's been held, that you've admitted that it was your shutdown, which Senator Schumer did. And I think he was afraid that you know, they have the reins, and if they don't do something, we will, and that's your nuclear option. So I think President Trump was leading when he discussed those sorts of things.
You have to admit there's a rift in the Republican Party when it comes to immigration. You've got a promise from Mitch McConnell to take up this issue on the Senate floor. No such promise being made by Paul Ryan. Should there be a promise to take up the issue of Dreamers and to debate immigration?
Well, I think you got to go there. I mean, but honestly, with hyperbole probably intended, you know, for Senator Schumer to declare a victory because the Senate's going to act on DACA is kind of like saying we won because they promised that a week from now it'll be Monday again. What we know is that there is a desire on both sides of the aisle to address the reality, existential in the question of 800,000 young people, to address DACA. Having said that, there's hyperbolic headlines that say, for example, in the LA Times, deportations of DACA recipients surge under Trump. If you read the story, and the LA Times wrote a good story on it, they pointed out that the 43 people deported had all been found guilty of criminal offenses or gang activity. I want to help people who were brought here when they were 2 or 3, but I don't want to help people who are engaging in criminal activity. And the other thing here is I think we were asked to prioritize the well-being of these people ahead of 9 million children as it relates to CHIP, right? In my state, 67,000 kids, 1.1 thousand expectant mothers, and ahead of funding our armed services. And I think the answer, the long-term answer to DACA is a secure southern border so that we can control immigration, which I support, so long as we're bringing people in that are going to help this country like generations preceding them have.
I'm not so sure why you can't just have a clean DACA vote. If you're a dreamer and you've broken the law, you're no longer under the rules.
Thank you.
So,
exactly.
So you're going to go anyways. But you're saying it's coming before CHIP, it's becoming before funding the military, but it doesn't have to. I mean, you can do all these things at the same time.
No, but I think, and thank you for being candid and even-handed in your reporting, but the deadline for CHIP has passed. The deadline for the federal budget to support our troops has passed. The deadline for DACA is in March, right? Unfortunately, and I think you and I would agree on this, we oftentimes do this like a high school kid does a term paper that's been pushed to the last minute, but really and truly, the clock has run out on CHIP. The clock has run out on a budget. We have until March to do something on DACA. If Senator Schumer were to have done the same thing in March, I'd have a little bit more sympathy because that's the date that the president, right, he said it. So, yes, but there's going to be discussion. I want to secure that southern border, and then I want to address the reality of young people who were brought here as children. We did this in the 80s with a this, then that. It didn't work, which is why we find ourselves here again. Let's do it a little bit differently this time.
Let's talk about this immigration ad that was released by the campaign for the president. Take a look at it.
Democrats who stand in our way will be complicit in every murder committed by illegal immigrants. President Trump will fix our border and keep our families safe.
The White House is bouncing around the room a little bit in terms of who's responsible for this ad. You had Mark Short over the weekend talking to Chuck Todd saying that this wasn't a White House ad, even though it was paid for by Donald J. Trump. Do you agree that it's a good idea to say that Democrats will be complicit if there's any more crimes being committed by an undocumented immigrant or illegal immigrant? They're complicit with murder.
Look, I support the bulk of what this president's done, but I am frustrated as I can be with the messaging. We need to tone down the rhetoric in this country, right? We need to not have U.S. senators and vice candidates saying we need to fight them in the street. We need to not have the sitting vice president say they want to put you back in chains. And if I'm willing to criticize former Vice President Biden or Senator Kaine for that hyperbolic rhetoric, then I ought to be willing to criticize the president if he's responsible for that. Let's tone it down a little. There are a lot of people who I don't agree with, who don't agree with me, who I get along very well with. That's what America is supposed to be. So if indeed he's responsible for that, I think he ought to change the tone of the rhetoric. It may win in the short term, but it's bad for America in the long term.
With all due respect, Congressman, how in the world are you going to tone down the rhetoric when the president himself is no fan of toning anything down?
Well, I mean, look, ultimately in life there are those things that we control, those things that we don't control, and those things that we can influence. And by saying on your program that I'd like to see a change in the messaging, it's only me continuing to message that I'd like to see a change in the messaging. But we do need to secure our border. There are some wonderful people who came here as immigrants for sure. That doesn't mean that some bad people didn't come here illegally too, right? So we should be able to concede these things and work towards a reasonable solution without sort of casting our ideological opponents as some sort of existential evil that threatens all of humanity. It's not who we're supposed to be as a nation. So but I think, you've been very even-handed in this report, and I'm trying not to, obviously I'm pretty partisan, but I don't need to be mean. So.
Congressman, it's been great tangling with you and bouncing around the room, if you will, if you let me use that again. Appreciate your time, sir.
Outstanding.